some time answering some questions about your priorities and how you think about the budget. Then we're going to ask people to come and do a little report back about that. So one thing to remember when you go into your breakout rooms is to think a little bit about who wants to do that report back, so we can hear what everybody was saying, even if you are all at different tables. Then we're going to send you back to your tables to let you have a run at building a budget, so you can see what that's like and what we're doing in this season of making the budget, and then we'll wrap up. So unless there are any questions about how we're going to proceed, I'm just going to jump in and say what we really do want to have happen by the end of this meeting. If we do our meeting well, we will have done a couple of things. We will have put people in a position to give us feedback about resident high-level budget priorities. And we really want that input, as people who work in OMB, that's the Office of Management and Budget, or we work on the mayor's staff, or we're department directors, anybody who works for the city, we're really the stewards of the city's resources. And to do a good job with those resources, we need to hear from people. We also want to be sure that you know, and that you can let your neighbors know, or people in your household know, that if you missed any of the in-person budget engagements, or you didn't make it to the online one, or if you did, but you just have an afterthought, we have a whole Engage page, which we can show you towards the end of the presentation, where you can just continue to interact with us through the whole budget season, see what we're up to, see the draft, see all those things. So we want to be sure that you're informed about how to continue to participate. And of course, we want to be sure that you get your questions answered about any government service, or how to get a hold of us, or how to or any questions that you might have about the budget. So that's what we're hoping to do with the next time that we have together. And you can see that Laura from Neighborhood Services just put the Engage page link in the chat. So if you know how to navigate to the chat, or you want to save your chat before the Zoom meeting ends, that page is really your best access to all things budget. So we've been doing these engagements for a little while now. We're actually required by city code, to check in with residents before we go and make the budget. And we try to make the budget engagements more engaging, more informative, more, year by year, so that we're doing a better job at them. And what we've learned is that that residents really do want to be an active part of the city's process, particularly around the budget engagement. And that mostly what people want to talk to us about in the budget is building things, what things that tend to fall on the capital side of the budget. So infrastructure, roads, parks, spray parks, those kinds of things that residents really want to talk about. That they really want to understand the status of those projects. And we're very, very happy to talk about them. So we spend a little bit of extra time on those things in our presentation, because we think we've picked up that those are the things that folks want to talk about. What we want to show you now, are we ready to look at a map? Because people are interested in the capital projects, we're going to show you a map of where the current capital projects are. So these are things that we've started because
Audrey, I can do that. Give me just
okay,
1 second.
there we go. Laura's gonna put that up for you. Yeah, my screen is asking me if I'd like to speak Arabic, but I would not, because I don't know how. I'm just going to cancel that, Laura. Okay. Wait and see. Here it comes. Okay, here. Oh, well, this is the Engage page, right? Yes. Oh, well, all right. This is going to do double duty then. You can see, if you can see, up at the top, how Laura navigated to this. This is, in fact, the Engage page. And you see there on the right, it's giving you a little timeline, and you can see the stars that are darkened are the stars as we moving through the budget process. But this map here is a really kind of handy one. Over the years, having heard from lots of residents and our directors and other people about what the city needs, we've begun building a variety of things all across the city, and they're in different phases of their development. So there are, you can see there are green dots, and there are blue dots, and there are yellow dots. And Laura, you would have to show me the key for me to remember which is which. Yeah, so yellow dots are things that are in the process of planning. So maybe these are things from last year's capital budget, things that got into the budget last year. And so our staff are busily planning them. And then the green dots are things that are in design. So, we do some planning and then we really get down to business and make specs and what kind of light bulbs are we going to use, or where are those wires going to go, or make the actual design to do the thing. And then the blue dots are things that are under construction. And I think people know this can take some time to go from residents and directors and others say, yep, we're going to do this, to getting it in the budget, to doing the planning, to doing the designing, to get it under construction. Sometimes, that can take, sometimes it only takes a year or two, but it can take a long time depending on the complexity. So we like to make sure that people have the updates. And if you click on any of the particular projects, you can go to the page for that project and see exactly where that project is in kind of its development. And then, Laura, are we going to do the sort of zoom ins on the parts of town now? Is that easy to do?
Not really, and
Not
especially
really.
since we have
Okay.
a
Okay. Well, you're here virtually.
sorry.
No, that's fine. You're for people who are participating virtually. Had you been in an in-person meeting in one of the zones, north, south, east, and west, we would have zoomed in on that particular part of the city, because it would be your part of the city, and you would want to see where your specific projects are. But we're going to leave that to you to find those things on the Engage page, and if you the specific projects, the budget page will help you get there, or you can just put in the specific project that you want and have a look at that. And it will tell you also how to talk to us if you have ideas about those or questions about those. So those are the just sort of updates we want to share. And I think now we have our video. This is Budget 101.
Audrey, I don't know if you're sharing sound.
Yeah, I didn't have any
Hang
sound
on just
either.
one moment. Let me figure out how I can share sound so it doesn't if it's not automatically doing that.
It is like a little thing you have to toggle when you select. You may have to unshare, then share again.
Oh, okay, let's do that. Oh, share sound, where it says share sound. Sure. Hang on just one second. Thank you for your patience, folks. Okay.
Jake Pollack. It's important to engage with the city each year during the budget process because the mayor is directing our taxpayer dollars based on what you tell us. Your input is critical. What is the budget?
The budget is how we organize the financial resources that we collect each year and allocate those resources to different projects. In other words, it's how we plan what money comes in and what money is spent out. The city's budget guides municipal work, which directly impacts our lives as residents in the city of Pittsburgh.
The budget has two different components. The first is the operating budget, which pays for most day-to-day functions. This includes employee salaries and benefits, utility payments, office supplies, computers, and much more. These things are all paid for by annual revenue. That's mostly taxes, but also licenses and permits and payments for services. These dollars lapse at the end of each year. The operating budget considers 5 years to capture short and longer term trends and goals. For example, if we had a new position in Public Works, we were able to anticipate the salaries and benefits associated with that role for each of these 5 years.
The second is the capital budget, which pays for major infrastructure projects like roads, buildings, playgrounds, and bridges. These big projects are mostly paid for with funds that the city borrows by issuing bonds. This allows us to spread the cost of the investment into a piece of infrastructure across the years that infrastructure will be in use, rather than all at once. Sometimes we transfer funds from the operating budget to pay for capital projects. These are called pay-go or pay-as-you-go funds. The city receives millions of dollars from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. These are allocated through the capital budget and are primarily used to help make our communities better. We also receive millions of dollars from the state and federal government for transportation projects. The capital budget considers 6 years of work so that longer project cycles can be considered. For example, even a playground can take several years. First, we engage the community, then we design the asset, and finally we move into construction.
How do these budgets work together? The capital budget pays for most vehicles because they can be used for many years, and the operating budget covers gas and maintenance. If you own a car, this is probably similar to how you pay off your car over time. The capital budget covers major renovations at your neighborhood pool, but the operating budget pays for the water bill and the lifeguards. From the money side, each year we pay some of our capital debt down from the operating budget. This is also similar to how house mortgages work.
Our government only has responsibility for services inside the municipal limits of the City of Pittsburgh. Sometimes it's hard to tell where Pittsburgh ends and another municipality begins. Be careful when looking at addresses. Zip codes are set at the federal level and don't always follow local borders. So the city may have responsibility for just one part of a zip code. The city's geography is split up into 9 council districts. Other groups are responsible for anything outside of these boundaries.
Even within the city limits, our government may not have legal authority over something because it is handled by the federal, state, or county government, or another agency. Other organizations that you probably interact with regularly include Pittsburgh Public Schools, Pittsburgh Regional Transit, and PennDOT. The city has a closer relationship with the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority, the Parking Authority, and the Urban Redevelopment Authority, but they are still separate from our government.
So how do we decide how to allocate funds? The budget process follows an annual cycle. Each spring, everyone gathers information. Department directors think about what they would need in the next fiscal year. The public thinks about what it would like in the future. We work with the Office of Neighborhood Services, city leadership, and the public to make sure we have all of this information.
When we move into the summer, the administration drafts the budget. Departments submit their budget requests. The Capital Program Facilitation Committee meets to review and score all capital proposals. OMB reviews all requests, meets with directors and the mayor, and crunches the numbers.
In autumn, we release 2 budgets. The mayor releases a preliminary budget by September 30th. This is like the first draft of the document. Sometimes we make changes to the preliminary budget based on internal and external feedback. Then the mayor submits a formal budget to City Council in November.
After November, the Office of Management and Budget passes the document and the process on to City Council's Budget Office. Council holds public hearings, can revise the budget, and must pass a final document by the end of the year. Then the cycle begins again.
While we are working on next year's budget, we are also monitoring what's happening in the current fiscal year. What do our finances look like right now?
The 2024 operating budget anticipates $714 million in revenue and $686 million in expenditures. As of the end of May, we have posted $379 million in revenue, about 53%, and we have spent $265 million, or about 39% of the total 2024 operating budget.
The 2024 capital budget totals $159 million. There hasn't been a lot of spend from this yet, but construction season is now getting into gear and departments are still spending down capital funds from prior years too.
2 unique things to note for 2024. First, this is the last year that federal American Rescue Plan dollars will support the operating budget. Since we planned 5 years, we've anticipated this. Second, there are challenges related to real estate. That is happening nationwide, and the Department of Finance is keeping close tabs on everything that is occurring at the county level. There are also several projects in the works to help bring more residents downtown.
Thank you for joining us for this Budget 101 session. We look forward to engaging with you throughout this budget cycle.
Right, so that was our Budget 101, and we have a little time now if people have questions about it, things you didn't understand, or things you'd like to understand a little more deeply than were touched on in the budget. Does anybody have a question they'd like to ask? We have lots of folks here. We've got our capital team here, and our operating team here, and neighborhood services, and more expertise than you could want on a Saturday morning. Buddy? Audrey, I don't know, can people just unmute themselves or do they need to pop their hands up?
I think that they should be able to unmute themselves or
Okay.
raise their hands, either one. Or they might be dropping them in the chat so we can have somebody monitoring the chat as well, Lisa.
Okay.
Hello, this is Thomas Wagner from Southside. Question that we've come up with a couple times with submitting budget request items. If it's I guess $50,000 is kind of the magic number for capital budget, but if it's a whole bunch of relatively small things, I've gotten mixed answers as to whether that's a capital item or an operating item. Like, I'm just making up an example, but let's say you were requesting 25 benches at $3,000 a piece. Is that capital or operating?
Dave, I see you nodding your head. You
Yeah.
want to take that one?
Yeah, historically, if it's raised up to that level, we've treated it as capital. An example of that is when the city redid all of our public trash cans. That was a multi-million-dollar effort, but each individual can was less than $50,000. So if we're approaching it in kind of a systemic way like that, or systematic way, we usually treat it as a capital project.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
I have a quick question.
Yes, yes.
My name is Abir Chatterjee. I live in Shadyside. I had a question just about the funding options. So with kind of operating pay-go, the other options kind of showed up. Typically when a budget or a capital project is going through the financing process, is there like a sequence of events or an order of funding that you explore in terms of whether it comes from the city or external grants or state federal funding? But what's the kind of order of events that determines how a project gets funded?
Yeah, that's a good question. We kind of work in the capital budget within the limits for which we're allowed to borrow bond funds. We pay interest on those, so we really only try to borrow the money that the city is capable of paying down in terms of debt service for the operating budget. And that's kind of our outer limit for the size of the capital budget. When we're going through to review and score projects and make recommendations to the mayor, we kind of have that hard limit. We'll say next round number $60 million in bond, and then we'll know maybe there's $5 million in pay-go that we can transfer. When we're making the recommendations, excuse me, we kind of look at the whole list of things from top to bottom, highest scoring to lowest scoring, and just see how far we can get down that list with the $65 million.
Maybe just a couple of words on that. So highest scoring and lowest scoring, there's a committee of people who are sorting through information and making sure like any given project gets scored on a whole bunch of different, I don't know what those things are called, vectors. How does it serve residents? How does it meet our equity goals? How does it, how does it fit into the financial picture? And that committee, comes from people all over the city, and they really try to think about that and then match. And then just to answer the part of your question that's about grants and federal funding, that funding kind of picks us. And so, the federal government will say, this year we have lots of money to address climate change. And so we then respond to that by saying, okay, well, if we don't have to fund those projects out of our own budget, we can slide more things into our own budget. So, we're kind of always just adjusting based on, what Congress passed and what the city needs. And then, we're just trying to match that stuff up all the time. And I'll just say one other thing about the grant. Some don't have matches, meaning the federal government will just say, go ahead and build it. If you give us a grant proposal that we think meets the aims here, it's all yours. And some of them come with what's called a match. That can be 5%, that can be 20%. So a bridge, for instance, typically the match is about 5% from the city. Other projects, some multimodal projects, for instance, will have like a 50% match. So those also have to be kind of budgeted for. So some grants are free, some aren't.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I'm not sure if my question belongs here or in the breakout rooms, but according to the video, it said that usually a project would take about 2 years from the beginning to the completion of that. I'm from Stanton Heights, and we have a project here that's gone more than 10 years and has more than doubled the cost of that project in the process. Why does that take so long, and how are those things decided, and why can't it be done when it's not as expensive as it is now?
That is a good question. And there may be other people who want to chime in on this question. Our goal always is to move as expeditiously as possible, and for lots of reasons, because as you point out, every year something doesn't happen. The money that we budgeted is going to turn out to not be the right amount of money. Generally speaking, prices don't come down. Also because, you can sort of think about the capital budget almost like a water pipe, right? Like that money is moving through. And so if projects aren't moving, the pipe kind of gets gummed up, and it's hard for us financially and fiscally to jam more projects in there. So we always want to go as quickly as we can. What can slow a project down? Often construction is always a risky business. We find a sinkhole. We find that'll slow down your parks. We find things that we didn't anticipate. We found a mine, a subsidence, from a mine in a project that we were doing in a district that isn't your district. And so, there's a variety of things that can slow us down, but we don't like it, and we know that you don't like it, and we really do try to move things along as quickly as possible. I don't know if anybody else has some other layers to add to that. That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I'd like to add to that. I'm from city planning, and just for instance, different types of infrastructure require a lot more capital than others. So striping for a bike lane is a very different proposition from adding bulb outs to the corners or putting in bike racks. So all of this stuff coming through grants from the federal government can take quite a bit of time, whether they're through being appropriated, getting into allocations, and then finally making it to the city level. And as Lisa mentioned, the stuff that goes on underneath the street, we don't see it. And so making repairs to water lines, making repairs to sewer lines, you can open up a whole host of things that are just not anticipated. So that generally is usually why things get prolonged and why prices, of course, because of the pandemic, things will go up.
I want to draw attention to one question in the chat, which Leslie asked, will they consider putting a family-friendly movie theater back at the garden on the north side? And expressing a desire to have things of that nature because most nearby are closed. And then Amy chimed in and said, we really want more third places in public areas. So is that, I guess, specifically, I don't know if this is even a question that can be answered in this context, but can someone speak to that about a family-friendly movie theater on the north side?
Have any information about that? We might have to, or maybe somebody else does, or we might have to get back to you about that. Can anybody answer that question?
I know that they do have movies throughout various parks this summer. We can definitely bring that to the parks director's attention to know that there is some interest in the north side. And I don't know that she'd be able to get anything on the schedule for this summer, but we can definitely put it on her radar to have that area potentially utilized in the future.
Mm-hmm. And I could be wrong about this. I'm embarrassed not to know the answer to your question because that theater is like 4 doors down from me, but I don't think that the city owns that. And if that's the case, we probably don't control the programming, though we can certainly talk to the people who do about what the neighborhood would like to see. But let us check on that for you.
I do not believe that was originally owned by the city. I'm just a resident, but that said, there should be nothing stopping the city or an organization that works with the city from being able to put on a similar event in that same space. Even the community itself could do it without needing an organization. You just need a projector and a white sheet.
True. Thank you. there any other questions? These were all really good ones.
Someone's
Gary,
got a
your
mic.
microphone is bugged.
If you want to put a question in the chat, we'll read it and see if anyone here can answer it. I also just want to say, if you have questions, neighbor@pittsburghpa.gov, that maybe you don't want to ask here, neighbor@pittsburghpa.gov goes to our neighborhood services team. I'm Laura, I'm on that team, and I check that email. So I would be happy to try and pass that along to whomever, or if you think of something after this meeting is over.
All right, it looks like there might be another one, Laura, in the chat.
Pat so it sounds like maybe Pat's mic is not working. Do you want to chat a question for us? Amy suggests raising hands and says, FYI, that was moved to reactions. So check out that smiley face so that you can raise a hand if you have a hand to raise. But
Laura, I think Gary also had a question before Amy.
Oh, speed humps. I've been trying to get speed humps on my street for a long time.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I've been trying forever. I've had an issue for 25 plus years with people flying through my stop signs on my street. I've gone through every avenue, 311, everything that has been told to me to explore, and I have had no success. I know that there was someone who supposedly came from the Department of whatever department handles traffic calming, and they said there was not enough traffic on my street to warrant speed bumps, but all day long, all night long, cars are going up and down the street, and they said that the traffic was not going at a high rate of speed. I said, well, at a stop sign, the rate of speed is 0. And when you're accelerating through stop signs, you can hear the engines. They're going like they're trying to do some type of thrill ride. And I've had the police here plenty of times. No, they just tell me that we have a problem here and we need to contact 311 or whatever the case may be. I've been doing this for years. How does somebody come down here and help me before somebody gets injured or killed?
Yeah. What I'd say, Gary, is that the question that you're asking, it might be the one that that we get the most questions about. I think there is widespread concern across the city about traffic and a huge desire to have more traffic calming. And so I think, I don't know if anybody from DOMI is here, or maybe Jan, know this off the top of your head. But I think we have like 1,200 requests for speed bumps and something sort of equivalent for stop signs. So we know it's a really big problem. And I will say it's become worse since the pandemic. Like the average rates of speed since the pandemic is like people came back from the pandemic and I don't know, their feet got heavy on their gas pedals because people are going, 7 or 8 miles an hour faster than they used to. So I want to start by acknowledging that it really is a thing, and it's a thing that we think about a lot and are trying to arrange our resources to deploy them as quickly as we can and as effectively as we can to do what you just said, which is to prevent people from being hurt. So 1,200 speed bumps a year is just not something that we can do. We don't have the capacity for that. And that puts us in the unfortunate position of trying to place them where we think they will do the most preventative good. And so Domi, and also, you know, to the prior question, try to speed it up so that we're able to do more and more and more each year and get through that list. What happens now is that there's a kind of screening that they use, and you've already mentioned some of the things. How fast are people going? You know, they look at things like how close is this to where vulnerable users will be trying to cross the street, maybe a school or maybe in front of a rec center or something like that. And it's not, it's challenging. It's really challenging. And so what I would say is, hearing the frustration, you know, people bomb through my stop sign here. I know what you're talking about. It is good to, you know, to continue to stay on the list. Domi has a page where you can sort of see where they're going and how it is that they're going there. And it really isn't so much a question of no one hearing. It's more a question of, yep, got it. We're trying to move through this line as quickly as we can. I don't know if other people want to add anything to that.
I've been told that 4 years ago, oh, it's in the budget, we'll do it, we'll try to do it next year. And I've almost been hit 4 times coming onto my street. And it's not just a casual, oh, slow down and ease through the stop sign. It's a revving of engines, and they are accelerating past 40 to 50 miles an hour through stop signs. I've seen regular people do it. I've seen school buses do it. There's not a sidewalk on my street, so kids have to walk up and down the street. So, I've pursued this. The person that gave me the link, the person that gave me the link to this told me that she lives right around the corner and she's almost been hit. So that's why she wanted to give me somebody is killed and on it before something happens. Because that's the only way it seems, you know, you say that it's not in the budget or we have to, you know, there's $1,200 a year, but if somebody were to get hit and news to show up, speed bumps will be up 2 weeks later.
So
Gary,
traffic calming, striping.
Sorry, I was going to say, I'm going to put my email in the chat, Gary. If you want to shoot me an email, I can look up your particular street and get you more information. I'm the infrastructure engagement specialist in the mayor's office. I work closely with Domi and can get you answers about what the most recent status of your street is. So I'm going to put my email in the chat. If you want to shoot me an email, we can connect this coming week.
Enough there wasn't enough cars going fast enough to warrant speed bumps. I am actually on the very edge of this. I'm 3 doors away from Wilkinsburg. When people, one person looked at it and said, "Oh, your street's on Wilkinsburg." I said, "No, it's in the city." And so when I will.
Okay, Gary, can you please reach out to Jan? We need to carry on this conversation. This isn't, we hear you, we appreciate your input, but this isn't the right forum for that. And if you hook up with Jan and the neighborhood services team, they can get you the information that you're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, will do.
Wow, okay. I think this is our cue to move into our table talk. So let me just run through the kind of way that it'll handle, and then our Zoom wizards will put you at tables with other residents and folks to have the conversation. So should we just flip through the questions really quickly so people have them in mind, and then your facilitator can remind you of them as you go. So there will be a facilitator at each of your tables. As I mentioned at the beginning, don't forget to choose a speaker, because we are going to ask you to report back about what you learned. So somebody who maybe will jot down a few notes and be ready to report out for your table. You'll be at your table for 25 minutes, and you've got 5 questions, and facilitators will sort of nudge you when it's time to move on to the next one. as I said, then we'll come back and we'll hear from all the different tables. And then, yeah, we just ask that you use the rule. Sometimes we call it step up, step back. If you're a person who jumps in and answers questions readily, do that and think about then taking a step back. And if you're a person who kind of hangs back and keeps your thoughts to yourselves, share them with us. We really would like to know what you have. So take a step up. And here, I think, are the questions. Let's just flip through them quickly for people. So you're going to just do some introductions so you can get to know your neighbors and where are you coming from and what's your experience with the budget process. That's your first question. The second one is, what are your thoughts about what Pittsburgh needs to grow into a stronger, modern city? However that question strikes you. The third question is, what are the services that are important to you and your family? The fourth is if you can share your ideas about what local governments should do when resources are limited. If we don't, have all the funds we need to do all the things we want, should we tighten our belts, have cuts and reductions, improve our work processes, or find new sources of income so that we have more money to start with? And then finally, the fifth question is, if you could approve budget funding for just one new project next year, what would that be and why? So those are the questions that you'll have in front of you. As I say, the facilitators will help guide them through you, step up, step back, and report out, and we'll see you when it's time to hear what you said. Okay? All right, do your magic Zoom thing.
Yeah, I'm